So good start, massive turnout. Very happy to be here. At least we have Giampiero from Roma Airport. So looking forward to your feedback and looking forward to have a conversation. Especially there are few. If you want to come in front, that'll be great. We can have a nice, cozy conversation, all of us. So that'll be great. So my name is Ravichandra. I lead the microgrid business at Schneider Electric for Europe and international. Our mandate is to build end-to-end systems and services for microgrid, focusing on specific use cases, such as the one for transportation. It's an interesting segment, transportation, where the types of use cases, the complexities that we encounter are very interesting, which helps you scale the business in the other segments where you don't find such complex use cases. So that's more the intent. Yeah, so I jumped a bit. And then in the next 15 minutes, what I'm going to share with you is the challenges in transportation, what we encounter today in the market, what is our focus area that we work on today in terms of our offer and architectures, especially for the key sectors in transportation. And finally, two interesting customer stories, one from airports in Europe, and the second one is Montgomery County from US, where they have built multiple microgrids for resiliency. So looking forward to your questions, comments, during the presentation. So I think we have 15 minutes?
Yeah, even a little bit more.
15 minutes, okay. So we have good time for Q&A as well. But just to understand the audience that is here, so how many of you are working in transportation? If you can raise your hand. Okay, so Giampiero is for sure. Okay, we got and how many of you know what is a microgrid? Like what a microgrid does? Okay, very good. All right, so, I built my presentation in a way which is at a level where everyone can arrive at the same conclusion in terms of what transportation challenges are and what microgrid is. And then those of you who want to dive deeper in the topic will be very happy to meet you at our booth, show you the innovations that we are working on and the type of architectures that we are building, okay? So I'll move forward with the presentation. Now, we are all using transportation to get from point A to point B, and we all realize what challenges transportation is facing today, especially that it's going through massive changes, So number one, population growth and urbanization. We see movement of people from smaller towns to big cities. We have mega cities, we have deca cities. That is creating a huge demand on transportation, almost 3.5 times. At the same time, transportation contributes massively to the GHG emissions. Almost 24% of the greenhouse gas emission comes from transportation. So if we do not manage this growth and demand on transportation in the right manner, you can imagine the impact it will have on the carbon emissions in the time to come. So that's another challenge that we face. At the same time, what we have seen is the governments around the world, whether it's European Union or United States, of all the incentives and investment packages that we know about, we are looking at roughly 900 billion, trillion plus euros amount that is dedicated to solving this problem. So interesting area, a lot of challenges, and there is investment out there to solve those challenges, right? And the way we see transportation infrastructure of the future, it must be integrated. I'll dwell in that through my presentation. It has to be decarbonized, and it has to be resilient in the way it is built. So that's something we'll go deeper as I go through my presentation. Now, when we look at transportation, there are three core sectors that contribute massively to the CO2 emissions, and that should be the focus area. We were talking to Giampiero about airports. Airports is a massive area. There is an airport carbon accreditation program that covers roughly 600 airports worldwide. It's a very well-structured program that helps them define that journey for decarbonization. Likewise for ports, there are 71 ports that have enrolled into World Port Sustainability Program. Again, another structured program, and which helps them decarbonize. And finally, urban transportation. So here it's more about regulation in the United States or US depending on the election result. that we will have. But the focus on urban transportation in European Union is to reduce that greenhouse gas emission almost by 55% by 2030. So very aggressive targets there, and 90% by 2050. And then when we look at these three areas, the main focus is around scope 1 and 2, which is about electrification of the infrastructure that exists across the airports, ports, and then scope 2, which is replacing the energy sources and moving to more greener electricity. And depending on the progress, which is part of these programs, the airports or ports authority can get access to further funding, especially coming from the governments around those countries. So interesting problem, three sectors of focus. And then as we move more towards electrification, because electrification is the way we decarbonize, and more electrification means more need for energy and clean energy, that's when microgrid comes in. So what is a microgrid? It's basically a power source which integrates into your existing grid or GSG source that you have already created. And it provides a level of resilience, sustainability that helps you, go on that decarbonization path in a much, much faster manner. Now, from Schneider point of view, when we look at microgrids and solving the transportation challenges, we are always looking at the life cycle of a project, from design, build, operate, and maintain. And I'll delve into that more. And then when we look at a microgrid architecture, which you can see on the right of your screen, at the bottom we have distributed energy resources. So this is your battery energy storage, your PV inverters, your EV chargers, so all the loads that exist on a typical network. Then we also have electrical distribution, which is your energy control center, which helps the distributed energy resource interact with the grid or interact with the system. And finally, two layers on top. So you have power management system, which ensures stability, safety, and obviously grid compliance as you build those microgrid that interact with the grid, and they need to be compliant with the grid. You have sometimes zero export that needs to be managed. And then the top layer, which is a digital layer, energy management system, which helps you forecast, optimize when to consume, when to produce, store, and sell your energy. So that's basically the microgrid architecture that we are talking about. And then going further, when we look at a microgrid, the vision that we have is to bring together the supply side equation and the demand side. And that's when the complex integrations come into picture. So integrating into charging management systems as you add more EVs in your network, integrating into building management system, the complex HVAC assets that consume more and more energy. And finally, services. So a question that some of our customers have is, what type of microgrid I need and how do I size it? So that's when we come in to help them size the type of distributed energy resources that they need to install, and also the financing model, even going for energy as a service solution, which I'll delve into. So I'll focus on two key customer case studies, one for airports, which will focus on design and build, and one for urban transportation, which comes from Brookville Smart Energy Bus Depot from Montgomery County in US. Now, many European airports are enrolled into the airport carbon accreditation program that I talked about before to define and implement their decarbonization program and the renovation journey that they are going through. We are supporting few such airports. So this is one of the airports where the challenge was to do a feasibility study for microgrid for them to enhance their energy resilience, to support ground equipment electrification. So they are changing a lot of their equipment from diesel to EVs. And finally, bring a level of efficiency in costs and carbon emissions. And this is an outcome in a nutshell. So they already had a natural gas genset which was on site. And this is very interesting about airports. Most of the airports have some kind of energy source which is already there for backup power. So they had a 3 megawatt natural gas genset. And then we recommended a 5 megawatt PV and a 10 megawatt battery energy storage, along with supply and demand side integration. Especially, we had platforms that we had already installed in this customer site, including building management, power management, and SCADA that was operating the airport. So very interesting case. And this is a typical architecture of that case. So as I was mentioning before, our intent, so I was discussing before, airport is really like a city. It's a very interesting area where you have habitants, where you have restaurants, malls, services, flows of people. So very interesting case where you can try different use cases within airport environment. This is a typical example of our architecture for decarbonization for an airport, where we look at supply side equation, bringing that together, and the demand side, bringing all those assets that consume energy in one environment. Now, if I focus on the supply side, which is on your left, so there is a microgrid that is installed in this particular facility, which balances the power and switches between power sources. So if you look at an off-site power, on-site power, backup power, including storage, so it's able to switch between those power sources. Then it's also able to provide the higher level of use cases, such as frequency containment reserve, which is really important as the flexibility market develops in Europe. Dynamic tariff management is another one. So that's on the supply side. Then on the demand side, our approach is always integration across platforms. So integrating new loads, especially with EVs that you see. So a lot of EV charging, ground power equipment, ground support equipment that is getting introduced more and more as the airports electrify. And finally, integration into building management and power management. So bringing all that architecture together is important to build a level of flexibility in your airport infrastructure where you are able to arbitrate. Depending on the forecast of energy that is available, you are able to arbitrate which assets you are able to operate, which assets you want to reduce the energy that is allocated, and even switch off some of the assets. So that's the interesting part about the airport. And when we look at a resiliency project for an airport, our intent is always, one, to bring that resiliency when we look at the supply side, and always drive down, bring the efficiency to a level where we keep reducing the energy consumption, even as we introduce new energy consuming sources such as EVs. So that's one case. And then this is the outcome of this feasibility study. We are still working on this project, which is in execution mode. So 6 to 8 years of projected return on investment with energy savings, 30% reduction in carbon emissions, and backup power that you can see on screen. Now, as the flexibility market develops in Europe, we'll see that the ROI cases go down and down, probably sub 5-year level, which will make it more and more interesting to invest in such projects. The second case that we have is from Brookville Smart Energy Bus Depot from Montgomery County in the US. Now, another interesting town in the United States that faced a lot of disruptions, power cuts due to hurricanes over a period of time. And the way the leaders of this county responded is by creating a long-term decarbonization resiliency plan with us, where they created a vision to decarbonize to achieve net zero by 2035. And they installed several microgrids with us in this county. So this is the third of the microgrid which we created for Montgomery County, the case that I will share with you. And one of the things that we saw with the leaders of this county is the ambition, the ambition around going for reduction in emission, but at the same time, making sure that the type of service that the citizens are receiving is really at a level that is minimum disruption. So their expectation was 99.99% availability of those bus services that were disrupted through those hurricanes. Yeah. So one part of the goal was to convert 70 diesel powered buses in this county to completely EV fleet management. So it had a level of EV charging management system that we introduced. So that's a typical operate and maintain. So there is some interesting part that I want to mention about this project. Obviously, the microgrid was 6.5 megawatt with 72 hour of charging. Now we did this project with our Alpha Structure arm. So Alpha Structure completely owns this infrastructure. What the customer is paying is energy as a service model. So we invested in the capex, and we provided a system, a solution to our customer that helped them decarbonize and move on that path without investing in capex. And we are completely operating this system with our network operating system. So remotely operated with our platform, and it's able to deliver that fast charging. So it has two 450 kilowatt chargers, roughly 180 kilowatts. So quite a robust system, and it works even in disruptive times, so which is very interesting. And this is the impact of this project. So 70 electric buses that were introduced with almost 100% availability, 62% carbon reduction that we achieved, and without investing capex, especially for customers. So it's owned by us. We operate the fleet management system while the customer pays for the service. So that's the second case, very interesting one, very close to us, because with Montgomery County, we have this journey that we are going towards to help them achieve that net zero. So this is the third part of that journey while we build more such systems for them, whether it's their courthouse or their public buildings. So very interesting, And then, by the way, you can visit virtually this project and see the infrastructure, how it's installed. So to summarize, microgrids, very interesting as we move more towards electrification, especially driving decarbonization in transportation. The energy use goes up, and microgrids bring an interesting solution, especially on the supply side, to decarbonize your source. However, our vision is also to bring that supply and demand side architecture together. So not only decarbonize on supply side, bring that level of sustainability, resiliency, but also to create efficient infrastructure, and to reduce the level of CO2 that is generated by the system. So bringing that end-to-end system and services approach into design, implementation, and operations. Yeah. So that's it from me. Now you can, as I was mentioning, you can visit the Montgomery County, take the tour, virtual tour, which is at the top. And obviously, I think my presentation was quite high level. So if you want to go deeper, we welcome you, obviously, to ask questions and visit our booth as well, where we can take you deeper in those case studies. Okay.
Thank you. We still have a few minutes if there's any questions about these cases, about the microgrid. So happy to give the chance to ask them now.
Well, I'm looking forward to the answer.
Yeah, indeed. So we heard about airports. We're going to one of the airports now, namely that of Rome. So I want to invite the next speaker on stage. And thank you very much.